Welcome to Gen X Mindscape, the podcast dedicated to exploring the complexities of midlife and the pursuit of a purposeful life. I'm your host and fellow Gen Xer Kyle, here to accompany you on this journey. Midlife is a season of introspection and new beginnings. In today's episode, we're joined by Dr. Dorian Minzer, who shares insightful wisdom on embracing midlife transitions with intentionality and purpose. Sometimes I feel like midlife can be a bit of a maze as I try to think clearly about what's most important to me and how to intentionally spend my time, money, and energy. That's why I really appreciate Dr. Minzer's framework that brings clarity to this journey. After outlining this framework, we dive deeper into the practicalities. And Dorian offers hope and practical strategies for those who may currently feel unsatisfied in important parts of their lives, such as finances, health, and relationships. Our conversation gave me plenty of food for thought towards identifying core values and priorities that will help me design my own midlife mosaic. I hope this episode does the same for you. I'm really excited to share this episode with you, so let's get to it. Today, we are honored to have Dr. Dorian Minzer, a distinguished speaker, author, therapist, and coach, who has devoted her career to helping individuals shape their lives into a vibrant mosaic of purpose and fulfillment. With a profound belief in the uniqueness of each individual, Dorian's journey has been a testament to embracing life's opportunities and challenges with intention. She is the co-author of The Couple's Retirement Puzzle, 10 Must-Have Conversations for Creating an Amazing New Life Together. She is also the host of Revolutionize Your Retirement Radio podcast. If you're interested in exploring these resources after our conversation, I'll put the links in the show notes. Welcome to the show, Dorian. So glad you are here.
Yeah. Thank you, Kyle. Thanks for inviting me.
You are welcome. Could you start by just giving our listeners some insight into your background and how you became interested in our topics today?
Sure. I've always been interested in people in life transitions because when you think about it, we have transitions throughout our life,
Yes.
Probably from the moment we're born, although we may not be as conscious of those. And with my interest in transitions, I had gotten my very first therapy, a master's in social work degree back in 1970, and was really interested in working with individuals and groups, and then began, working more with people just in different life stages then. And they seem to have paralleled my own life stages. And so, around that time or in preparation for it, I realized that being 60 was different from like in my parents' generation when 60 was really old.
Yes,
and I began, really studying in preparation for my own being 60, learning as much as I could about adult development, about life planning, about positive psychology. And so it sort of morphed into working with people second half of life. But I still love working with younger people too, because I think each life transition informs how we're going to approach this one. And so, I just love working with people in life transitions.
Yeah, it's really easy to see how much you enjoy that, and your approach just really resonates with me. How would you describe the ideal mindset for approaching midlife and that contributing to our overall well-being?
Well, a few things. That's a really, really good question. Advice I would give to listeners who are probably in not the second half of life yet would be to try throughout life to have what's called a growth mindset. A growth mindset is really wanting to learn, wanting to be the best we can be, without, denying reality that we all age. Some of us age better than other people. Some have genetic aspects, but generally there are a lot of parts of life we can have some control over, like exercising our body and brain, good nutrition, meaningful relationships, spirituality, connection, engagement, purpose, and meaning. I can't stress that, enough. And a growth mindset is being open to yourself and your own possibilities rather than what's called a fixed mindset, where you maybe believe the stereotypes that society has for you. Regardless, it could be gender-based, it could be age-based. We live in a society where there's a lot of ageism, which is really a prejudice against being older, which is actually a prejudice against our future self.
That's right.
If we're lucky, we're going to get older.
Yes.
And sometimes we internalize that. So it's so easy, for example, when you're 40 or 50 or 60 thinking, oh my gosh, I am so old now, it's all downhill. If you believe that, it will be. So it becomes important to have this growth mindset, to know it's not a chronological age. It's how we learn, what our ideas are about ourselves and what our relationship is to other people, to the planet, to the world. And how do we want to engage in it? Now is the time with that growth mindset at whatever age you are, to think more positively that you matter, that you can make a difference if you believe that. And if you don't, there's a slippery slope of kind of going downhill that unfortunately people can go into at whatever age.
Yeah, that's so well said. I think sometimes we can feel like we're on the decline in midlife because our bodies are changing and aren't what they used to be. But it's really empowering to reconsider that we can take small steps, small intentional steps towards what we really want. The key is, what do we really want?
Yeah, I think it really is important to think about what is important to you. What are your values? What are your dreams? What are your strengths? I think that I like the framework of puzzle. It's part of why the book that I co-authored has the title Couples Retirement Puzzle. And I do want to mention to readers, although it's written for couples, it's really for anybody. And the person who wrote the foreword actually said he thought it should be given to newlyweds. Not that newlyweds are thinking about retirement, but it's all about how to communicate about important issues.
Right.
I like puzzle because it's a verb and a noun, and it's a framework that I use. So there are many things we need to puzzle out for ourselves. And if you're in a relationship or friends or whoever's important in your life, it's good if they can puzzle it out. So you each can create your own vision of what's important, what's not important, what you'd like to do if possible, some things you definitely don't want to do, and have whoever's part of your life journey do a similar vision creation. And then you figure out and try to create a shared journey and talk about, where are there similarities? Where are they aligned? Where are they different? What are some things to do together or separately? So that's the verb part, the puzzling it out. The other part that I like is that there are many aspects of our life that are like puzzle pieces. They're not going to fit together perfectly like a jigsaw puzzle, but they do impact each other. So for example, things like finances, things like health and wellness. Those are two big ones that I think impact many other lifestyle choices. And I'm a believer, no matter how much or how little money you have, it's helpful to talk with a life planner, and particularly one who's what's called a holistic life planner that isn't as interested in just the number, but really wants to help you think about money as a tool and how you want it to help you have the kind of lifestyle you want. And health and wellness, we can't totally control it. There's some interesting literature and research that says by the time we're 65, 30% is genetics, 70% are things we can have some control over. If you've got the 30% genetics, you need to deal with that. But attitude still can make a big difference in how you deal with whatever, cards you draw in the luck of genetics. But the 70% are things I just mentioned before, the healthy eating, exercising your mind and brain, meaningful relationships, self-esteem, connection, engagement, purpose and meaning, giving back. So there are all these puzzle pieces. So again, health and wellness and finances are two big ones, but other ones are expectations of yourself or whoever's important in your life, time together, time apart. Even in the best relationships, it's better not to just be joined at the hip. I think it really is good to know that we need time together and time apart. We still need other friends. We need a social life and community. It's important to think about in what ways to give back at whatever age. We live on this shared planet, and trying to feel, part of it, where we, want to protect it for future generations. And want to, in small ways, bigger ways, try to be part of that. thinking about end of life issues, wishes. A lot of people don't want to think about mortality. I think knowing that as far as we know, we all have the same end, that we're going to at some point die. I think actually that makes life even more precious. Mm-hmm. You don't want to necessarily dwell on, kind of the end point, but I think the end point can inform you to make sure you've got things in order. No matter what your age, have a will, have your documents in order, have a healthcare proxy. It's like liberating, and it's an act of love for whoever the survivors are to be able to do it. And once you've done it, you can put it away, but then revisit it periodically. Spirituality is an important thing. And I don't necessarily mean religion when I say spirituality. For some people, it may be that. For others, it just may be a sense of how am I in this universe? How am I interconnected to nature, to everything around me? And often as we get older, there are shifts to really trying to figure out what is it all about? So if you are a spiritual person, mindfulness, different ways of wanting to, cultivate that, that's great. It's never too late to develop that part. And attitude makes such a difference. There's another study that says that a positive attitude about aging and growing older actually can give us 7.5 more years of life. And that doesn't mean a Pollyanna attitude. I mean, no matter how well we take care of ourselves, we're going to age. I think it's always important to still have dreams and hopes and goals. So you may have to shift them. Mm-hmm. If your body doesn't want you to be at high altitudes or, as much hiking, then find places to walk. We may not be able to change events that have happened to us, but we can have some impact on how we respond to it. Mm-hmm. And we always have our story to keep telling, and we can change our story. We don't have to be a victim, to things that happened in our past that were hard. We can, kind of work it through and in a transformative way, grow and be resilient and hold on to gratefulness and forgiving ourselves and others.
Could you talk a little bit more about how people apply purpose and values to the puzzle pieces?
Sure. So sort of thinking back to an earlier question tied into this one, Kyle, sometimes people sort of say, I don't know what gives me purpose. And purpose doesn't have to be with a big capital P. It can be a little p. So regardless of your age, it may be helpful to kind of think about as you're growing up, were there things that really you did, things that became hobbies, people you admired that did things? What were they? As you're kind of going through life, have there been things that interest you that you've had to put aside because there's just not time for it? So it's helpful at different stages of the life to resurrect some of those ideas, and to think about, what are things that kind of make my juices flow? What are things that excite me, that, where I feel connected? And let yourself think about what is it that makes me come alive? What is it that the world needs? And sometimes that helps you begin to think about what the purpose is. It can be nurturing in a relationship. It can be, dealing with parents, siblings, nieces, nephews. It can be volunteering. It can be being engaged in a cause that's important to you. It could be political. It could be a societal, the planet, climate change. There's no right way. But what I do find is that the more we feel like we matter, that we can make a difference for ourselves and others, even a smile and kindness, goes a long way and can help you feel a sense of purpose. Studies show that, and some people can start new things later, and many do. Start now. Oftentimes it can be so rewarding at whatever phase of life you are now, to think about, what are things I really believe in a lot? What might be little tiny ways that I can give back at whatever age I am now? Maybe volunteering, it might be sending a check. There's no right way, but take that with you, develop it now. Maybe there's, causes or things that you want to get involved with now that you'll have more time for later. So don't be frightened by the term purpose. It doesn't have to be a big, big P. It can be just what makes you come alive. What's a way that, what's a part of you want to develop, maybe a way to give back.
That's a great way to say it. And it feels like it puts you on solid footing for some of your planning and problem solving, taking advantage of those areas where you feel strong and then building up some of those areas that you're not feeling as on solid footing about. What are some guidelines that people in mid-age should consider if they're not feeling great about where their finances are at this time in their life? Hey there, listeners. I wanted to take a moment to express my deep gratitude for listening and for your support. Today, I'm asking for a quick favor that won't cost you anything but would be very valuable to me, and that is, leave me a review. Positive reviews will help other like-minded Gen Xers find the show and join our community. These reviews are also a big encouragement to me to continue to develop the show and create helpful episodes for you. So thanks for sending a review my way, and thanks for being a part of the Gen X Mindscape community.
So, again, a really good question. I think it's never too early and never too late to think about finances. It's often helpful, and again, it can be with a friend, a partner, a sibling, or a financial planner. It's helpful to think about what were the money messages that you had in the past. How was money handled growing up? Sometimes in good ways, sometimes not. So it's helpful to think about what are the money messages that you carry with you that might be helpful and might be getting in your way.
Mm-hmm.
So how was money talked about? How was it spent? Was there any emphasis on saving, on investing? It may help you kind of look at what areas you want to develop. And really, and this is at whatever age, I think it can be helpful to talk to a financial person. There's some good literary programs. It's empowering for men and women to learn what you can about it. Don't be afraid to say you don't understand it. There are so many online courses. As I said, there are these literacy programs. None of us are born knowing it all. And, I do think it's helpful at whatever age to just admit that maybe you had some complicated money messages from the past. We also develop what are called money personality types. Some people are savers, some are spenders, and it could be combinations. Some, are monks, I don't want to spend anything, kind of thing, very frugal. And what can happen in a relationship is, you may have a very different money personality type than your partner. And that can create conflict. So money, often people avoid conversations about it. They avoid puzzling it out for themselves and talking together. I really encourage people to do it. Don't be so afraid of it. Often I say when I give talks, money, sex, and death are sort of taboos. I'm saying you can talk about all of them.
Yeah, avoiding it doesn't change what's actually there underneath. And you'll never regret having a handle and a plan on that. Easy for me to say, but it's a great reminder to hear it from you. What about health? I know in midlife, it's stressful. There's a lot of responsibilities. Our bodies are aging. What about those people that aren't feeling good where they're at with their health at this point, but they want to have a longer, healthy life? Or how do you counsel your clients in that situation?
The first is noticing that and being aware of it and mindful. A first step might be actually talking to your primary care doctor or nurse practitioners or, whoever's available to you. If you're not feeling at a good place in terms of your body and exercising, first of all, therapy, coaching, seeing your PCP, nutrition can be helpful. You don't want to suddenly start exercising if you haven't done it as though you've been doing it forever. It ties into the kind of the small steps. It's, maybe puts a little bit of money in there to get a personal trainer, for, an initial consultation at least, and maybe, at the beginning on a more regular basis till it becomes sort of part of your repertoire. You don't want to overdo it to start with. You want to build up slowly. but know you can build up. Again, there's studies showing that even in their 90s, people who start being able to do some, small amounts of exercise can really help themselves. Mm-hmm. And if in fact, people talk about wanting to age well and all, exercise is such an important part, and what you eat. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to do it alone. Get a buddy. Sometimes it's hard, but get a walking buddy or get a buddy to go to the gym with. Again, I think during COVID, it was harder. People were staying inside. I think walking maybe was one of the few things, people could do. But don't feel like if you haven't been doing it, it's too late. It's never too late. I usually don't like to say always and never, but it's never too late to, I do think no matter what age you are, you can benefit from starting to take care of yourself. But it's developing a new habit, and developing new habits take time. You might have to unlearn some old messages. Some studies say it takes 21 days to develop a new habit. Others say it takes 90 days. Maybe it's somewhere in between. It takes time, and they're going to be, a few steps forward and back and forward and back. So when, say you've exercised for a while and you're starting to feel good and then you're at a plateau, it's easy to give up and you might feel like it's back, but it's not all the way back. View the few steps back as just retuning, refueling, and then move forward again. I think asking for help is often hard for people. So I want to encourage your listeners. It's not a weakness to ask for help, whether it be for a therapist, a coach, your medical practitioner, nutritionist, a personal trainer. We live in an interdependent world. And, I think the idea of having to be so super independent can work against us. I mean, yes, we want to have autonomy. We want to, be as able and capable as we can. But, I think it helps to think about the world as sort of interconnected and we help each other.
Exactly. And that leads so nicely into your next puzzle piece, which is relationships. I think in midlife, there are so many layers. First of all, in the roles that we're playing, we play so many roles in our lives, but also we've been through so many different types of relationships and emotions during our time. We may have some regrets. We may have long-term cherished relationships. We may have relationships that have changed a lot. We may have new relationships. And so what would you say to people who feel like this relationship area isn't where they want it to be?
Sure. I think relationships are so important. What I think is important is, if you get into this fixed mindset of beating yourself up, that is not helpful. So again, I think the growth mindset becomes important here. We all have a number of different relationships and we all do make mistakes. None of us are perfect. And it often is important, to let yourself reflect on some of the relationships, the good, bad, and the ugly, and to think about and maybe work with yourself or with the help of a therapist or a coach or a new partner or a friend, try to take stock of what you bring to the relationship. I always say it takes two people that bring things. And sometimes people can bring out kind of the worst in each other. And sometimes people can bring out the best in each other. And, it's helpful to think about what you bring to a relationship. Are there any patterns to it? Are there ways, that, maybe it's hard for you to listen or really appreciate differences and, kind of get stuck in your own way if somebody disagrees with you? I mean, what are the issues at work? I think self-awareness, reflecting on it. I mentioned before, I think self-forgiveness as well as sometimes forgiveness of others is really very helpful and important. None of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. The important thing is to learn from the mistakes, Also trying to be grateful. We could focus and maximize all the negative things about, people and life and all of that. That's a choice. Or we can try to not deny it, be aware of the negatives, but not magnify it so much that we lose sight of what are some positive learnings I can have from it.
Yeah.
I can't change it, but what can I learn from it? I'm a believer that you can do some repairing even by writing a letter to somebody who's no longer here. Because the being able to write and reflect and look at the part you bring and being able to own your truth or your perception of it, which may be different from others, can be really helpful. If the person is still alive and there is a wish to try to repair that relationship, don't keep putting it off. And it may be hard. There's things called gratitude letters, where you can, write a letter thanking somebody for the impact and importance that they had in your life. There also can be forgiveness letters, where, maybe you feel like you've wronged somebody. There's so many different ways, if you think about it, that, it's not like it has to be static. I mean, if relationships, that area is not one that you do well in, get some help. I mean, certainly there's so many self-help books and programs and also helpful both therapists and coaches out there.
Yeah.
But it does mean admitting that none of us are perfect. We all have strengths. We all have limitations. Sometimes strengths can even be limitations. But if you want to live your best life, try to make it that way by owning your own part in what you bring to relationships. And, maybe if you're in a new relationship and it's problematic, maybe it's important from the get-go to get some help for it.
Thank you for that. It clicked for me that growth mindset really facilitates humility in relationships. I know you can be defensive when somebody is open with you or communicates something that may be hard. If you are recognizing that you can change, I think that sets you up for more humility and change. And it's kind of an antidote to some of that defensiveness that we might have in relationships that can really harm relationships, I think.
And it's so easy to get caught in a relationship in sort of win-lose, my way, your way. Try to think of the win-win. Open a space for the relationship, which is sometimes it's your way, sometimes it's my way. Agree to disagree, but appreciate what you're hearing. I think it's helpful.
Yeah. One last area I wanted to talk about within your puzzle framework is spirituality. You touched on that earlier, but let's go deeper. For those that may be struggling in this area, what are some things you would say to those people?
So again, spirituality doesn't have to be this big S that feels, so scary to people. It really is looking inward in a sense and letting yourself reflect. It's often helpful to think about what are 3 to 5 things I'm proud of. What are some things that were peak experiences? That's the beginning of allowing yourself to open to the spiritual, i.e., what's inside of you. And it helps us often just realize the interconnection that we all have. Many people talk about mindfulness and meditation.
Mm-hmm.
I think those all can be very important things. There's a number of different apps that, people talk about. I think Headspace is one. There are a number you can, one of the benefits of the internet is you can Google any of these topics and be led to something. And, you can experiment with some meditation tapes, and work on letting yourself relax. One part that I recommend to everybody, I was trained in the relaxation response, like maybe 40 plus years ago. And the first part of it is the breathing, which is just knowing, we all breathe, of course, but deep breathing. And so your listeners can try it right now. Just take a deep breath in through your nose, hold it for 4 to 5 seconds, and then exhale through your mouth. And take another deep breath. And as you exhale, just silently to yourself, just say, relax. And it can be any message you want to say to yourself. But as you exhale, it can be relax, it can be present, it can be push away distracting thoughts or feelings. It can be feel your inner strength, don't react, act. All these messages can be helpful. And what I recommend to people, which was recommended to me many years ago, is like once an hour. If you can and it can be more often, if you tend to realize you tend to be a reactive person, or you get anxious, or you're depressed or whatever, just take a couple of moments for a couple of breaths that just center you. Your eyes can be open if people are around, they can be closed. If the once an hour or every half hour or whatever doesn't work, many people say try it at a time of transition. So when you've finished a conversation or before you're going to start one, or when you stand up or when you go into a different room, the more that you allow yourself to just still yourself a little, to quiet yourself a little, you center yourself and you can discover, you can let yourself maybe begin to feel some feelings that are in there. I think that's the beginning of opening yourself and spirituality. So it's a deeper connection both with yourself, but it is humbling, as you said. It can be just realizing we're one little part in this. I find walking and appreciating and really feeling gratitude of I'm just looking outside my window right now of just how beautiful the world is. And, that is part of spirituality. So don't be afraid of it. For some, it has a religious connotation. For others, it's just part of like, what's it all about? Why am I here? And not that anybody's going to have all the answers, but sometimes it's just soothing and feels so wonderful to just know you're not alone. We're part of this big wide universe.
I love that perspective so much. The puzzle, the framework, the mosaic, the midlife mosaic, as I'd like to call it, it becomes clearer as we think about these things and start to move forward with some of these ideas and find what works for us. As we kind of get towards the end here, Dorian, what are some practical steps that you would suggest for people seeking to craft this midlife mosaic?
Well, I think there are a number of things. I think the beginning is to let yourself reflect about yourself and your life. There's a wonderful little exercise you can do, which is kind of a life review. You can take a piece of paper and have a line in the middle and put the year you were born and maybe put 100 years at the end and do it in segments of 10 years. And, you can do it in a number of ways. You can write down what were the life events that were going on around you. What were the family events going on around you? What were meaningful experiences in your life during, say, the first 10 years, next decade, next. That can be helpful because it can, again, help you sometimes, look and appreciate sometimes the good, bad, and the ugly. Mm-hmm. But knowing, you can't change things, but looking at how you've dealt with them. But don't be afraid to just open yourself to say, I really do want to live my life as fully as possible. So I want to open to the confusions and the uncertainties and maybe, come up and deal with some of the things that really feel like they're maybe still holding you back. Mm-hmm. There are therapists out there, there's coaches out there, there are different group kind of programs. So, I guess what I would encourage someone to do is don't be afraid of taking stock of your life now at whatever age you are and really thinking about what would be some steps I can do. Another little thing that can be helpful is that you put the different areas. It could be the 10 must-have conversations I have, like finances, health and wellness, spirituality, family connections. Make yourself like a little graph. It can be a circle or it can be kind of pillars. And then, so put on the bottom, health and wellness, finances, friendships, relationships, family, whatever. And then on the side, do 0 to 10 and just sort of see where you are now. Like maybe right now, in terms of health and wellness, you're at a 2. So then do it for each of those areas and you'll have like a little graph. And so then you might want to think, okay, I put it at a 2. Why is health and wellness at a 2? What would make it a 2.5? Not what will make it a 10, because that's expecting you to go from A to Z and you can't. What would make it a 2.5? Maybe just even starting to exercise, maybe calling a trainer. What would make it a 2.5? The same in the finances. What would, say you have yourself at a 4, what would make it a 4.5 or a 5? Maybe it is looking and trying to find some financial literacy. Maybe it is, asking friends for suggestions or family members for suggestions of a financial person to talk to. But in each situation, what would be the next little step that could help you move along? And then, periodically reassess. And again, I do think little steps give you mastery that get you another step and another. If you try to do too much, you set yourself up to disappoint yourself and maybe fail. So be realistic.
I love how you tied that all together. That was really, really wonderful. As we kind of come to a close here, are there any other resources you would recommend for our listeners seeking to learn more or to create their midlife mosaic?
So there are a lot of resources. There are programs that are online, so people can look at Modern Elder Academy. There are other programs, people can look for coaches, people can look for midlife career transitions. In terms of what I can offer, I encourage people to go to my website, revolutionizeretirement.com. It may focus somewhat on the retirement and getting older, but I think it's applicable at whatever age. I offer coaching, therapy, speaking, workshops. There's a Retirement Coaches Association. I know your people aren't necessarily interested in retirement, but it is helpful to think about the things ahead. There's so many different programs. I do have some resources on my website. I must admit that it's not totally up to date because there's so many newer things that come. I also have a free monthly interview with experts series. Some of it has to do with retirement and aging. Some have to do with just living. The sign up always is the week before. So on the third week of the month, the sign up on revolutionizeretirement.com. It's always Tuesday at noon Eastern time, except for December because it's too close to the holiday. Mm-hmm. Once you sign up, it's free and it's open to professionals and the public. Once you sign up, you get a recording link afterwards. And then in addition, I have a podcast series. So to celebrate, I'm now in my 11th year of this interview series. So to celebrate the 10th year, I started putting out on podcasts the earlier interviews. And they're all free. And so I would encourage your listeners, you can kind of scroll through them and see what interests you.
Incredible. That definitely interests me, and I know what I'll be doing tonight. So, Dorian, this has been so helpful, so thoughtful, and so insightful. I want to really thank you for taking the time to be with us, and thank you so much for being on the show.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
I hope you've enjoyed this discussion with Dr. Dorian Minzer today as much as I have. I really appreciated Dorian's simple yet profound and practical guidance for those of us dedicated to forging intentional paths towards a purposeful existence. Thanks so much for listening today. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd be very grateful if you would subscribe and share it with your friends who might also find today's discussion helpful. So until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and stay true to yourself. Hey there, listeners. I just wanted to take a moment to express my heartfelt gratitude for listening to this podcast. Your support and feedback keep me motivated to continue growing and crafting episodes that are meaningful and helpful for you on your journey. That's why I'm inviting you to join our Gen X Mindscape community page on Facebook. It's a great space to share your feedback on the show, suggest future episode topics, or simply connect with fellow listeners. Also, don't hesitate to leave me a voice message over at genxmindscape.com by clicking on Leave a Voice Message at the top of the page. Whether you choose to remain anonymous or provide your name and email, it's entirely up to you. Once again, thanks so much for listening. I'm definitely looking forward to hearing from you.